Greetings fellow men, Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. The AfD is rising in the polls, in federal polls, but also in regional ones in Germany. In a recent federal poll, the AfD even overtook the Social Democrats as the second largest party in Germany. Everybody knows that the Social Democrats are out of touch and they do not care about the Germans anymore. Neither does Angela Merkel, so both of these parties are losing voters. It becomes really clear to more and more people that these parties, these politicians see themselves as representing the non-Germans rather than the Germans. So why would Germans vote for them? Merkel and the Social Democrats, also the Green Party I think, they are fighting for foreign interests and against the interests of the German people. So it is no surprise that less and less people want to give them their vote. And more Germans realize that the AfD is the only party in Germany at the moment that is trying to fight for their interests as Germans. There is a concept, a word that I've used in previous videos, but also I touched upon this in my last video, and I want to explain this in a little more detail again. The term is Volkspartei, and it shouldn't be confused with something like People's Party, that is of course reminiscent of a totalitarian system or a communist regime. Volkspartei, literally translated, does mean People's Party, but in German this term is used to mean something like a major party or a big tent party. A party that is open to all the people and tries to represent many different people and basically the entire folk. With the German political landscape becoming more and more fractured, people say that the era of the major parties, the era of the Volksparteien is over. But I think the AfD could become the next Volkspartei in Germany. So let's define the term a little bit. I want to tell you guys what exactly I understand by this term. When you look on the German Wikipedia page, for example, it basically defines the Volkspartei in contrast to special interest parties that have a special clientele that only really care for a certain part of the folk, but not for the entire folk. A classical example here is the Green Party. They basically focus on environmentalists and people who work in the public sector. The people who vote for the Green Party basically want more and more taxes, and they ideally want all the industry to be shut down in Germany. This is of course not for everybody and it's not inclusive for everybody. So this is not a Volkspartei, this is a special interest party. Also, our Liberal Party primarily is representing very rich people, so private practice doctors or rich entrepreneurs. They do not have the interest of working people or of unemployed people in mind, so they're also a special interest party. Our big Volksparteien, our major parties, were of course the Labour-like Social Democratic Party and the conservative Christian Democratic or Christian Social Union. Of course, just like the Labour and Tory parties in the UK or like the Democrats and the Republicans in the USA, they lean this or that way. So one party is maybe more industry or business friendly, the other one has more historical ties at best to the unions, but there are entrepreneurs or high income people in both parties. And also working class people can be found in both parties, of course. Now, of course, there can be exceptions. There can be parts of society that maybe do not have their home in one of the parties that can be described as a Volkspartei. But these groups shouldn't be too large and there shouldn't be too many of them. So in principle, these Volksparteien, these major parties, they try to reach everyone in society. They try to design their policies with more or less every group in society in mind. And their goal is also to ideally rule without a coalition partner. And to me, it is very important to say that just having many votes is not enough. A true Volkspartei would really try at least to have all the different classes, all the different parts of society, all different income classes and all different occupational forms and many different ideologies or worldviews in mind. Of course, they don't have to follow them, but they should be careful not to exclude too many people. The idea is that you reach some kind of a consensus of society within one party. But at the same time, I think you can do all these things, but if you don't get the votes, you're not a Volkspartei anymore. So you should at least have like 35 or up to 50%. And theoretically, I think there can only be 2 of these parties per country. So as many of you guys already know, maybe the AfD now has 17.5% in a recent poll, and the so-called Grand Coalition is not that big anymore, actually, according to this poll. They don't have the majority anymore. So that means the Social Democrats could not rule together with Angela Merkel and Horst Seehofer anymore now. So many years ago, the people were laughing about the AfD. They were like an anti-Euro party, so they wanted to get rid of the common currency in the European Union. And then they were also critical of the immigration policies. But these were really just separate issues. So not really a single issue party, but a certain kinds of issues party. Of course, it's still a new party and they were really small in the beginning. Now they're starting to grow, and as more and more people from different backgrounds and many spheres of life start joining the AfD, of course, they will also discover new fields of politics that they really haven't focused on yet. And also 17% is of course not a Volkspartei yet, but they are ideally suited, in my opinion, to become one. And the reason for that is simply that a lot of people from many diverse backgrounds in Germany are opposed to these isolated issues that the AfD was turning against in the beginning. So they were united because they don't like the euro and they don't like our immigration policy. So this common enemy or this common goal united them. And many different people saw that they have this one thing in common, and that made them maybe look past their differences they otherwise had. So that mechanism could actually lead to an amalgamation of many groups in Germany that are now part of the AfD. And the AfD is already very diverse, actually. The leader of the Bavarian AfD, Peter Büstron, for example, he is a refugee himself. He came with his parents from Czechoslovakia in 1987 when they were fleeing communism. They entered Germany as refugees. He integrated very well, and now he is the head of the Bavarian AfD, and he will have my vote in the fall. Also, I told you in previous videos, the AfD actually scores very high among new Germans. So that means Germans with a migratory background, or Migrationshintergrund, as we say. In some parts of Germany, the AfD is actually very popular with these people, because these people also think that Germany needs to go back to common sense policies and a little more law and order than we have right now, and a little less laissez-faire and a little less open borders maybe. I really don't want to play diversity Olympics now, but everyone knows that Alice Weidel is not a straight person, for example. So even the LGBT community is represented in a very prominent position in the AfD. Now, if you just look on a regional list of the members of the party, you will see that there are plenty of academics, plenty of scientists, and plenty of engineers in that party. So I think the high income or the intellectual part of Germany is also very well represented there. People have the impression sometimes that the AfD is really opposed to welfare and will lead to a very cold social climate in Germany where we wouldn't help people in need anymore. And while me, as someone who pays a lot of taxes, is of course not in favor of lots of welfare, the funny thing is that if a person who actually needed help and is dependent on redistribution of income would actually be very wise to vote for the AfD. That would require, however, that these people do not vote in their short-term interest, where leftist parties would just promise them a bunch of goodies in the short term. In the mid to long term, the AfD is the only party in Germany I see at the moment that could lead to a stabilization or lead to sustainability in an economical sense, to stabilize our welfare system that we have right now. Which means that people who don't deserve this welfare system, who never paid a single cent into our welfare system, when we keep those people at bay and give them less, that means the people who need help here in Germany and who are, according to our laws right now, actually entitled to it, would have better chances of still being able to receive that help in the mid to long term. And this also goes for pensioners and retired people, by the way. If things go on like that, our welfare system, our social systems would, or they could actually very probably collapse, or they would have to be drastically reduced. So also people who are dependent on redistribution of income from earners to unproductive people, they would really act in their own best interest if they voted for the AfD. So I really don't know if it will turn out this way. All I'm saying is the AfD with their 17%, according to that one poll now, and in the other polls they also scored higher than they used to a couple of months ago, but they're not there yet. What I'm saying is that they have the potential to become a major party in Germany. I don't even know if they want to become a major party. Maybe they want to stay a party that is mostly seen with respect to certain isolated issues, such as the euro or migration. But I have a feeling that they will sharpen their profile in more and more areas of politics and become competent politicians in many new fields. Which means, of course, that they must go into the classical branches of politics. That means they must have experts on defense, on healthcare, on our social systems, things like questions of retirement and of welfare, but also environmental policy and so on and so on. But as they are growing so fast right now, I actually have high hopes that they will be able to accomplish this. So it all depends on the will, the intelligence, and the hard work of the party. But I think there is a big potential for the AfD to establish itself very soon as the next German Volkspartei, the party for every German. Enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden.